let's begin. So thank you everybody for either joining us live or rewatching our replay. My name is Lucy Tesarova and I am a board certified business coach helping companies and people grow to the next level. And it's my honor to welcome here Ralph Sanchez. Thank you, Ralph, so much for accepting my invitation to share your tips and wisdom around how to optimize and boost our immune system. So Ralph has been looking into how to optimize brain health and immunity for over 25 years. He has over 25 years of clinical experience, and also he is a best-selling author of The Diabetic Brain in Alzheimer Disease. And his new book is coming this year. It's going to be published soon, and it's about improved mind diet. So thank you again, Ralph. I'm giving the word to you now. Welcome and
thank you, Lucy. It's so much fun to be on here with you. I can't wait to get started. And perhaps we should just get the ball rolling here because we have so much information to cover.
Yes.
And people can always watch the replay if they didn't catch all of it and they want to see it from the very get-go. So I'm going to share my screen if we're good to go. Do I have your okay to start?
Yes, let's do it. Let's start.
Okay, so just want to make sure that I got the right one here. Hold on.
It's so wonderful. At least we still have our internet and Zoom and webinars. So even though in quarantine, we can still reach to people and people can communicate with us.
Yeah, well, of course, this is a big deal now. So hopefully you can see my screen now. Okay, so I'm going to get started here. This is a beautiful image of a T cell. And the T cell is an important part of our immune system. It's part of what's called the acquired immune system. And T cells actually play a big role in fighting pathogens like viruses. So as you see, what we're going to be focusing on is actually how to boost our immunity. And it's going to be focused on nutrition and diet. And when I make the differentiation there is that nutrition can include supplements. And sometimes supplements are a critical component of boosting your immune system, particularly when your immunity may be lower. And of course, lifestyle is huge in that whole issue as well, too, as most people understand by now. So we'll get going, and thank you, Lucy, again for presenting today. I really appreciate your time. And I'm just going to get right into it here. So the focus is building a more resilient immune system. And the antimicrobial and anti-inflammatory therapies that are important for protecting yourself against pathogens like viruses, and stress modification. And I'm going to start diving right into the inflammation aspect of all of this because inflammation is a huge component. And how well your immune system responds to an infection, and also in the underlying features of your predisposition to having a more severe problem. Now, we all sometimes talk about our immune system being low and being susceptible, but this COVID issue has really brought up how some people are more predisposed, and that's when they have underlying issues related to chronic inflammation. So we're going to dive into what that's all about in terms of COVID, but we're going to be getting into some of these details. Now, I'm going to get a little nerdy on everybody here and share some of these science-based facts around why, something like diabetes and heart disease and hypertension
Yeah.
why these things predispose us to a bigger problem with the coronavirus. And it has to do with certain molecules that are a major component of chronic inflammation and can go, as even the literature points out, berserk when there are certain stimuli like pathogens. And there is, in a sense, an overreaction of inflammation. And if you have inflammation already going on, that tends to kind of blow up the whole thing. So there is a master regulator of inflammation called NF-kappa B. And what NF-kappa B does is it actually stimulates your DNA to start producing more pro-inflammatory responses. And so that's why it's called a master regulator of inflammation. And NF-kappa B stimulates massive inflammation by triggering other molecules, and a very, very important one is called NLRP3, which is an inflammasome. Inflammasome are protein molecules in the cell. And when inflammatomes are stimulated, they actually produce these other molecules that are called cytokines. And so when you start looking at the pathways of inflammation regarding numerous issues, whether it's the coronavirus or diabetes or heart disease or Alzheimer's disease. And when I first started looking at this research, when the coronavirus issue popped up, I was just somewhat amazed at the overlapping features between the issues related to COVID-19 and Alzheimer's disease and the susceptibility to all of it. Because in the diabetic brain and Alzheimer's disease, I make a very strong case as to why cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and hypertension and obesity are prime risk factors for developing Alzheimer's disease as you age. So this is a fantastic opportunity for everybody that's kind of on a lockdown basis at home to start changing their patterns, perhaps, to not only protect themselves a little bit more against this virus that's circulating around, but also to start strengthening not only their immune system, but their health in general, so that they can avoid problems later on in life when they get older. Because it's the elderly that's more susceptible to not only viruses, but a host of other health conditions. And it's chronic inflammation and a host of associated disease patterns that are called age-related diseases: diabetes, heart disease, hypertension, obesity. So the more you control this now, the better off you're going to be in terms of an issue with inflammation and hopefully dealing with a viral infection and also saving your brain later on. So obviously, if you've been paying attention, they've been talking a lot about, the issue of inflammation. Perhaps you've noticed in some of the discussions on television or other webinars you've seen, but the COVID-19 disease process in the lungs is characterized by what's called hyperinflammation. And that's what leads to the acute lung injury and the acute respiratory distress syndrome, ARDS, which is again part of the whole COVID-19 disease process. So that's why a group of people have more severe COVID-19 disease issues, because with this chronic inflammation and the inflammasomes stimulating cytokines, what can develop is something called a cytokine storm syndrome. And this is where a lot of evidence is now starting to accumulate in the research, because they're seeing that this is part of the phenomenon on why some people have to be not only hospitalized, but be put on ventilators. because of the acute issues that happen in the respiratory system. So they're now saying that all patients with severe COVID-19 should actually be screened for hyperinflammation. And that's a very important point in terms of emphasizing the inflammation linked to all of this. So again, these are the issues related to inflammasome signaling, which is a component not only to the COVID-19 problem, but also in cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, obesity, Alzheimer's, other respiratory diseases like asthma and bronchitis. And that's why those people are more susceptible and usually have bigger reactions, and of course, autoimmune disorders, which are characterized by excessive inflammation. So inflammation control is vital, and diet is where it all begins. It doesn't matter what kind of health condition we're talking about. Diet is where it all begins, focusing on healthy protein, on very special phytochemicals that we're going to be talking about that are derived from particularly vegetables and fruits, and of course, healthy fats. So we all know that a healthy diet is where it all begins, but it's actually crucial to be paying attention to this as we age, because if we don't, we start skewing into issues like insulin resistance and diabetes and heart disease. And a lot of people have lots of these issues on a low-grade basis, and they never get diagnosed. You know, if they're not working with a progressive physician that's really focused on prevention, they have chronic inflammation and all these disease processes brewing. So it's really, really important to focus on your diet and lifestyle, which we'll talk about briefly later on. But let's talk a little bit more about why protein is so important. So protein supplies amino acids. When you digest protein, you're supplying your body with many amino acids, which are the building blocks of not only immune system cells, but all the cells of our body. And a deficiency of amino acids has been well known to impair immune function. And there's many reasons why. There's many amino acids that are actually very, very important. So you remember that T cell image that I had in the beginning of the slide presentation? Well, two amino acids, lysine and arginine, support the integrity of the thymus gland. And those T cells actually are matured and transformed in the thymus gland. So the thymus produces what are called precursor cells that mature into T cells. That's why they're called T cells, because they're thymus-derived T cells. And they're the primary cells that attack viruses, bacteria, and cancer cells. So it's critical that you have a healthy immune system and the amino acids, the foods that support that, right? Other amino acids are very critical as well too. And cysteine, glycine, and glutamine are utilized in the synthesis of glutathione. And many people have heard of glutathione by now. It's the primary antioxidant that your body produces, and a related system, which is glutathione peroxidase. And I'll be talking about selenium a little bit, because selenium combines with glutathione to produce glutathione peroxidase. And so that's why nutrition is so important, because cysteine is an important mineral that's derived from your diet and supplements. And together it supports these antioxidant systems. And these antioxidant systems are not only critical for immune cells, they're depleted. The glutathione is rapidly depleted in stress and illness. So it's important to keep your amino acid and glutathione, profiles up in your body. And I take semi-regularly a glutathione supplement. And of course, I make sure I get my protein on a regular basis. Now let's start talking about what many years ago was characterized as the rainbow diet. And that's eating everything that's so colorful in our diet, and fruits and vegetables. And you see a wonderful little image there.
Yeah.
But what makes these foods so important is that they provide a wonderful class of phytochemicals and other compounds, which we'll talk about briefly. But polyphenols are the antioxidant and anti-inflammatory molecules present in these foods. And in my work with Alzheimer's disease, I focus a lot. As a matter of fact, the Improved Mind Diet is focusing on these foods in particularly, because the original Mind Diet studies showed that leafy greens and berries were the primary protective foods for the brain. And that's because of the polyphenols that are inherent in these foods. So it's critical nutrition, not only for your brain, but for your immune system, because of the antioxidant and anti-inflammatory benefits. And it does this. Remember the molecule NF-kappa B, which is the master regulator of inflammation?
Yes.
Well, there's another similar molecule. They're called transcription factors, because transcription factors stimulate gene responses. And NFR2 is another transcription factor. And what that does is it encourages the expression, or stimulates, activates the expression of over 300 genes.
Wow.
Called the NFR2 ARE pathway, that express antioxidant and anti-inflammatory effects and innate immune responses. Innate immune responses is the immune system you're born with, versus the T cells, which belong to the acquired immune system, and those develop as you develop in your life, beginning at childhood. So NFR2 is a critical master regulator of cell defense. And that molecule inhibits that critical protein complex, the inflammasomes, that are so big in the inflammation response characterized by a more severe exacerbation in the COVID-19 disease process, but in chronic health issues. You know, the diabetes and the heart disease and hypertension. And NFR2 actually tends to inhibit the cytokines, the pro-inflammatory cytokines that are produced by the inflammasomes. So it works on many different levels. And another fantastic compound, which I talk about in the Improved Mind Diet quite a bit, is sulforaphane. And sulforaphane is not a polyphenol. It's called an organosulfur compound, much like what comes in garlic and onion and other sulfur-rich foods. And particularly cruciferous vegetables are rich in sulforaphane, okay? Like broccoli and kale and arugula and cabbage and Brussels sprouts. And these foods are foods that you want to be eating generously on a regular basis. As a matter of fact, I take a sulforaphane supplement 2 or 3 times a week, particularly when I'm feeling a little dicey with my health, just to make sure that I'm ramping up those protective mechanisms, because it's a prime activator of NFR2. And while it's not a polyphenol, what distinguishes it from polyphenols, because some polyphenols are not absorbed very well. For example, cruciferous vegetables contain another polyphenol, which is referred to as a quercetin. And quercetin is a fantastic flavonoid. Flavonoid is a subclass of polyphenols. And quercetin is actually very useful for your health in general, your brain, but it also comes in cruciferous vegetables, and it's not very well absorbed. You know, it's difficult to get enough quercetin from your diet when you're dealing with health issues. It's a great antihistamine, used a lot in the allergy season like now. I don't know what I would do without quercetin, frankly. It keeps me from having bigger problems with allergies during this time of year. But as opposed to these other polyphenols, sulforaphane is really well absorbed. Okay, and as you can see there, it restores a cellular glutathione and other nutrients. And it's a critical component for immune function during aging. And one little tip around sulforaphane is that there's an enzyme called myrosinase that's activated during the process of chopping and chewing. So the only real way to get significant amounts of sulforaphane, because it's destroyed, the enzyme is destroyed in cooking. If you're going to be cooking with it, steaming is better, doesn't destroy as much of it. And what I do with my broccoli is I chop it up, which releases that sulforaphane through that enzymatic reaction. And then I cook it lightly, depending upon how observant I am about keeping track of that. And that way I know I'm getting a little bit more sulforaphane during the whole process of preparing that food. So I think right now is a good time to focus on another aspect of nutrition, and that is fats and fatty acids, which is a really important component. And everybody knows that, you know, healthy fats like omega-3s are really important for you, and coconut oil is all the rage. Coconut oil doesn't really provide the anti-inflammatories that anti-inflammatory benefits that omega-3s supply, but fats in general are really, really important in many aspects of your health, and particularly the way your cells function. There's a membrane around all cells, and these membranes are critical. That's where all the receptors are located. That's where all the signaling molecules are located. So your immune cells and other cells in your body, like the ones in your brain, are only as healthy as the fats that are composed in those membranes. And some people are led to believe that saturated fats are unhealthy. And too much of it can be, because it makes that membrane more rigid. All right. Whereas the omega-3s and polyunsaturated fatty acids that come in seeds and nuts and vegetable oils, that keeps the membrane fluid. And that's really, really important for your immune cells and all the cells of the body. And of course, omega-3s, as everybody probably understands by now, inhibits inflammation. So that's really a key factor for one aspect of fats in the diet. And as you can see here, those fats that are anti-inflammatory in that regard inhibit NF-kappa B and that inflammasome, and another pathway in the body, which is related to over-the-counter NSAIDs, NSAIDs, like ibuprofen, that some people unfortunately take way too much of, because there's many polyphenols and extracts of polyphenols that are shown to inhibit these pathways quite effectively, and as well as many medications. So it's important to work with somebody that really understands this and can help you to look for these appropriate substitutes in your case. So fats and fatty acids, a big component to your cell and your immune system and inflammation. And that one of the fatty acids in the omega-3 fish oil supplements that you may be taking, and of course in fish and seeds and nuts and other foods, is DHA. So much information on the benefits of DHA in the brain, but DHA also enhances B cell function and activation. So I talked about the acquired immune system that develops as you age. And the B cells and T cells are an important component of that acquired immune system. And the B cells produce antibodies, which everybody has heard of by now. So DHEA actually is very, very important in supporting the optimal function of those B cells. And it also supports a very, very interesting phenomenon that is all the rage in the health community. It's called autophagy. And autophagy is what the inside of your cells actually undergo when it's dealing with clearing away debris from the cell and also pathogens. So autophagy in your cells can actually help with, these pathogens that enter into the cell. And you can see there that DHA and many other nutrients augment autophagy, like the polyphenols, okay? So autophagy is a really important component. It's all the rage in terms of how to augment autophagy. And if you're reasonably healthy, or if you have something like diabetes and hypertension and diabetes, one of the most wonderful ways to stimulate autophagy is through intermittent fasting and caloric restriction. So I started some years ago to do 24-hour fast once a week. I highly, highly recommend it for anybody that can tolerate at least 24 hours. That's where the magic happens. And if you can do 48 hours, all the more power to you. That's even more wonderful. Or do 24 hours twice a week. But whatever you can do in terms of reducing your calories, particularly the bad calories. And what are the bad calories? Those are the refined carbohydrates and the sweets and all the excess carbohydrates we may be getting in our diet, right? So going the other way, eating a lot less of those and eating the healthy foods and maybe fasting, intermittent fasting. And there's wonderful programs out there that I'm going to be able to share with people, and there'll be an opportunity to have a complimentary discussion with me around this if you want to chat. But there are programs out there that make this whole process of autophagy a little easier. In other words, if you go very low calorie and use a whole kit, there's a well-known kit out there that people can use for 5 days to actually stimulate autophagy because it's based on caloric restriction, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So let's get into another aspect of nutrition, which is supplements. Now, I'm a big supplement guy. If anybody here that knows me, they know that. So I'm going to go to another screen share, and hopefully I can pull up this document. There it is. There it is. So this is a document that I'm going to be providing for everybody. It's in my immune system support and antimicrobial protocol. And in here, I have listed there's my introduction. And then I go on to talk about all the things that I think are particularly wonderful to have on hand and to support not only your immunity in general, but also to have on hand when you're feeling like you're getting a cold or a virus. And I want to make a disclaimer here, and it's a very important one. None of the information I share here, whether it's the diet and what it can possibly mean for you or these supplements, are meant to be construed as medical advice. So what I'm sharing here is information that supports your health in general, your immune system, your brain health, whatever health condition you may be dealing with, that's well documented in the research to support it, and in some cases even reverse it. But none of this is intended to say, hey, this is what you need to have for the coronavirus, okay?
Yeah.
We have to be very careful with that. Unfortunately, there have been a lot of hype and claims out there produced around things like silver. So I love silver, And there's actually a very specialized silver. It's called nanonized silver, which is actually one product has been patented and cleared by the FDA and approved by the EPA, okay? It's not colloidal silver. You see at the bottom there of that paragraph, colloidal silver is useful too, but not as effective. It's the nanonized silver that are available through select manufacturers that are the most effective because of the molecule size and how they actually can work over and over and over again, whereas the colloidal particle actually is one and done. Once it encounters a pathogen, it's finished. It can't exert a function anymore. So let's just go briefly through some of these. Vitamin D, everybody knows by now how important vitamin D is to their health. There's a little graphic on what might be considered optimum levels, but in the progressive medical community, it's pretty well accepted that if in a blood test, if you're looking at over 50 mLs, then you're really doing much better in terms of optimizing your vitamin D, and I recommend that everybody keep track of their vitamin D levels. Many, many years ago when I started my practice as an acupuncturist, I worked in the AIDS community quite a bit, and that's where I became really comfortable. Of course, in Chinese medicine, we talk about reinforcing the qi and building immunity. As a matter of fact, this formula right here in the Chinese herbal formula section, jade screen formula, is all about building your immune defense against the evil qi, as Chinese medicine refers to it. And there is a herb in jade screen formula that's called astragalus. And astragalus is, you can see down here on the herbal adaptogens component there. But herbal adaptogens can be really wonderful for supporting your immune health and your vitality in general. And then of course there's the ones that are considered to be more antimicrobial, like elderberry and olive leaf, which are wonderful as well too. But astragalus has surfaced in the research as a wonderful reinforcement to lung health. And they're now suggesting that people that have chronic respiratory diseases actually support themselves with some of these herbal derivatives of astragalus. And so people may want to be looking into all of this in terms of how they can support their immune system or their health in general. There's one particular antimicrobial that I am a huge fan of, and that's berberine. Berberine is used in many situations for a gut cleansing, but it actually has an antiviral benefit as well too. And it's also one of the prime supplements one can use to support issues related to diabetes. And I'll share that the research shows clearly that berberine, and again, remember the disclaimer, but berberine is the equivalent of metformin in the research studies. That's what it says in the scientific literature. Berberine is the equivalent of metformin in terms of how it functions in the body. So for some people, they may want to talk to their physician in terms of how all of that may work. And I'm just going to go over these others very quickly because we want to get on and get to the rest of the presentation. But you can see here mushroom, garlic. Garlic, again, is an organic source of organosulfur compounds like sulforaphane. So well known for its antibacterial and antiviral benefits. There's quercetin, glutathione, selenium, which I mentioned. Wonderful way to get selenium on a regular basis if you're not supplementing or it's not in your multiple is eat some Brazil nuts. Get 4 or 5 Brazil nuts on a regular basis.
Nice.
Of course, we covered the amino acids, vitamin C. There's a link there to what's called a vitamin C flush, which is a wonderful way of saturating your tissues with vitamin C and making sure you have a healthy immune response with vitamin C when you need that, especially. Vitamin A is a critical nutrient for respiratory immune health. Everybody by now probably understands that zinc is really, really important. A lot of people don't understand that vitamin B, even all the vitamin Bs that you're familiar with in terms of all the other benefits, is also important for boosting your immune function, and so is vitamin E. And there's two types of vitamin E. I want to point out that for people, there's tocopherols and tocotrienols, and tocotrienols are an amazing vitamin E family. So talk to your practitioner about that. Look at hormones. DHEA is really, really important for increasing the level of many immune cells like the T and B cells. And there's another related family called natural killer cells. Natural killer cells are also pathogen destroying cells and focus on, like the T cells, against issues related to cancer. But looking at DHEA and cortisol ratios are very, very important. As you can see here, the cortisol ratio is, DHEA cortisol ratio is an important indicator of immune health, because cortisol, too much cortisol, especially as you age, is immunosuppressive, all right? So you need enough DHEA. It's an anti-cortisol hormone, and so you need them in balance. All right, so looking at DHEA as you age is critical. Everybody knows about melatonin and how important that can be in getting some sleep, because it really helps a lot of people. But it's a critical antioxidant and anti-inflammatory, okay? And it's used in many degenerative diseases, including adjunctive cancer therapies. But they're also seeing a lot of, there's a typo there, but they're also seeing a lot of benefits for melatonin and respiratory disease. And acute lung injury, which is what happens in the COVID-19 disease process, right? Then there's all kinds of homeopathic and essential oils that can be used depending upon your familiarity with them and your resources. If people seeing this are familiar with homeopathic medicine, constitutional homeopathy at this time in your life, and may be really wonderful for strengthening your constitution and your immune system as well too. I highly recommend that if you know a good constitutional homeopath. And here are links in that document for a complimentary discussion if you care to do that. So we're going to go back to the presentation here and finish that up. And that's it for the supplements. And as I said, people can book a complimentary discussion if they want to get a more personalized protocol on what may be more beneficial for them. But let's see. Oh, here we go. I'm sorry. Of course, lifestyle is really, really important. And the supplements that I covered, you know, support a lot of these aspects in terms of chronic stress. And that's where the adaptogens like rhodiola and astragalus and Siberian ginseng and others can be very useful, because they regulate that whole cortisol stress syndrome that sometimes really needs some support through stress reduction techniques like meditation. And we can't speak enough about, you know, taking the opportunity to do some meditation or learn meditation. It's not only going to help with chronic stress, it's going to help with chronic problems related to sleep loss and sleep disturbances. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, too much sugar is an immune buster too. So the 3 S's, stress, sleep, and sugar. You got to make sure you pay attention to those guys to to support your health in general, the risk for all kinds of diseases and degenerative issues related to aging. And of course, right now is an important time to be focusing on all of this. So a nice quote by Deepak Chopra. I know he has a lot of fans out there, but your immune cells are like a circulating nervous system. The nervous system, in fact, is a circulating nervous system. It thinks and it's conscious. So a little typo there, I should say your immune system is in fact a circulating nervous system. But anyways, just to point out that our immune system is a very dynamic system. It's conscious. It's constantly in surveillance mode, looking out for us in terms of our immune responses and taking care of pathogens. And so supported well through nutrition that we went over, and supplements if you're prone to taking them. And we have some gifts for you. That PDF that I went through in terms of the supplements is available at the alzheimerssolution.com, and I'm going to show you in a minute how to get that, just to make sure that you understand. And then I have a very special gift, which is a 30-day diet and meditation course that you can access for free, and will help you if you need that extra support in terms of you know, what might be better choices for you in terms of nutrition and menu planning. And also, of course, if you're not used to meditation, there's a wonderful course which I'll show you an example of that can actually walk you through getting started. It's produced by a best-selling author. And Lucy, do you have something to share with people as well too?
Yes, do you have, yes. So if you've enjoyed our conversation, and we are still going to have a little discussion, we had some questions. Please sign up for other events or check out other events that I'm hosting with expert speakers, just like Ralph today was so generous with his time and his expertise. Thank you. So it's going to be on my website, lucitesarava.com/events, and there's be updated events of further speakers. More is coming in May. And also, if you feel you have a challenge in your business and you would like to take it to the next level, or you're a startup and unsure about what is the best step to take, feel free to schedule with me a complimentary discovery call, and you will reach me at www.talkwithlucy.com. And that's great for me. Thank you.
By any chance, did you put those links in the chat?
No, actually. So what I'm going to do, I apologize.
No problem. I'm going to see if I can share my my website and whatnot so that I can show people how to access stuff.
That would be perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so bear with me a second. When you go to the Alzheimer Solution, that's my website, the alzheimerssolution.com. If you wait just a few seconds, you're going to see this pop-up.
Oh, wonderful.
And if you opt in by yes, get my free premium membership, and you'll see right there, right here, that I'm promising that immune support, supplement, and nutrition protocol. And as soon as you sign up for the membership, you're sent to a page where you can download the document, okay? And then, if you can put in that link in the chat, Lucy, this is where the link takes you in terms of accessing my Healthy Living COVID-19 diet and mindfulness meditation program, all right? And as you scroll down that page, once you get to it, there's a place here where you can enroll. It just requires your name and email and a little information, and you have access to that right away. And you can preview the plan by just clicking on that right there. and you are taken to a place. Hopefully it'll show up there. There it is.
Oh, yeah.
And you can look at some of the things. I'll show you day 3, which is actually one of the days that you begin. And it's got the usual recommendations, reminders. There are the menus that we have in
Nice.
the plan. A lot of those I edit myself. There is the 21 days. These are videos by Jennifer Grace, again, a best-selling author, a Hay House best-selling author, and then there's other tips that we produce along the way as well too. So it's a really cool thing for people that want to have a little support and maybe are not used to getting that kind of encouragement or reminders. They can access that plan through the links. Hopefully that's in the chat by now.
Yes,
but if not, people can see this right here.
Give me a moment. Let me just enter it right there. And while I'm typing this into the chat, we actually have a few questions from...
Great. So let's get to that. I'm ready whenever you are.
Wonderful. So we have a question from Maribel about what is the dosage of lysine and the supplements, arginine.
Great question. If you're going to do supplementation, now one of the benefits of arginine, which is something we didn't have time to go over, besides its effect on T cells and immune function, it can contribute to a healthy, what's called arterial, cardiovascular artery function, because it's what's called a vasodilator, okay? And keeping your arteries supple and dilated, and the opposite of that is what happens in hypertension, they become stiff, right? So arginine is actually used a lot to produce what's called a vasodilating molecule, nitric oxide. And I take a nitric oxide arginine supplement every day because I have significant issues with my health history. And I supplement liberally to make sure that I'm protecting myself in many different ways, okay? My cardiovascular health, my metabolic problems, my brain, you know, my immune system. I've always had challenges with my immune system. It seemed to catch everything that's out there, all right? So, you know, taking things like those herbs that I mentioned and vitamin D and silver and zinc and all of that, I do a lot of that. But the amounts generally, this is a general thing, the amounts for amino acids for getting more support, more specific support for your immune health or for things like arterial health and arginine. And actually lysine also contributes to the health of your arteries. Lysine and vitamin C keep your arteries healthier, all right? So generally, you want to start at least 1 gram. You know, therapeutic dosages for most amino acids begin at 2-3 grams. And sometimes, in some cases, you can go higher. But start thinking about grams in terms of more specialized supplementation, 1, 2, 3 grams.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you for answering.
Yeah.
Also, Maribel's asking about healing already people with Alzheimer. I know you've mentioned a lot about prevention and how important it is to prevent Alzheimer from coming. But what if Alzheimer is already present for somebody? What can they do?
You know, that's a very difficult situation. I'll just share, my mother died of dementia. And, you know, we were able, fortunately, once we got her into a home to support her more specifically with nutrition. And I feel it really made a difference for her in terms of stabilizing. You know, once people are diagnosed with Alzheimer's and dementia, if it's advanced, the best you can do is delay the progression and stabilize the situation through nutrition. All of that information is available at the alzheimersolution.com. You know, I talk about glutathione, and another supplement that I'm a big fan of is lipoic acid. And I have some articles on that. I have articles on polyphenols, and of course, all of that is going to be in the Improved Mind Diet. So getting people that have health issues like that already in place is just focus on their nutrition, their diet, what kind of foods you're eating. It may be difficult because in the more advanced stages of that disease process, they're not as hungry, their appetite is not good, and they may need the support of a nutritionist to, give you more specific tips on how to approach that. But smoothies, what we did for my mother for a while. We were able to get the staff at the assisted living center to make her smoothies with protein and fish oil and many other nutrients. And that seemed to help. We were able to do that. So nutrition is a key component to that. And if you can get those supplements into them in one way or another by throwing them into the smoothie or whatever, that's fantastic.
Wonderful. Thank you. I actually have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Two questions. Number one, you've mentioned about the importance of healthy fats. What is your opinion or take on the keto diet? So you've mentioned.
Oh, yeah, fantastic. Especially, let's say in that question regarding somebody that has Alzheimer's disease, there's actually a prescription for what are called medium chain fatty acids, which are derived from coconut oil. Mm-hmm. And there's a specific profile of those fatty acids. It's called C8. And C8 is in a medical prescription called Axona, AXONA. You want to put that into the smoothie because that, especially if you control the diet and you go low carbohydrate, you can start shifting the body into burning ketones, which is fantastic for the brain. And there's a lot of studies on that. So coconut oil and medium chain fatty acid derivatives of coconut oil, which are in lots of supplements. There's also products of ketones that can be really, really important. In my book, The Diabetic Brain and Alzheimer's Disease, I have 3 case studies about the supplementation in those case studies. And these are people that already were diagnosed with what's called either mild cognitive impairment or early Alzheimer's disease, and very aggressive interventions with nutrition, caloric restriction, ketogenesis, actually reversed those conditions. Okay, so I'm only repeating what's out there in the literature. I'm not saying that you can do this, but it's possible if you pay attention and you work with a qualified practitioner. All right, so ketogenesis is fantastic for an aging person, particularly if they have diabetes and heart disease, because it starts to override the problem of insulin resistance. And insulin resistance is a key focus of what underlies those disease processes and Alzheimer's disease, and what I talk about extensively in The Diabetic Brain and Alzheimer's Disease.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. And what I'm hearing, how important the diet is not only for our immunity, but also for our long-term quality of our life and for the brain health.
Yeah, of course. Yes. Yeah. Now, as we age, if we're not taking care of ourselves, it may not be a good aging process.
Yeah.
And I used to do a lot of volunteer work. Like I said, I worked in the AIDS community, but I used to work in hospice-like situations and went into a lot of assisted living centers. And, so my mom fortunately had saved her money. We had a really good place for her, so it was a pleasant environment. Yeah. But if you haven't prepared and you don't have a lot of money as you age and you develop these problems, the care and the environment that you're put into, it's not a happy place. It's not a good situation, unfortunately.
So in a way, this COVID-19 situation and crisis,
it's a wake-up call.
It is,
it's a wake-up call for people that are really interested in nutrition and health and promoting all of that, this is a wake-up call, because now you're stuck at home, maybe, and not in all cases, but this is your opportunity to really make some changes. The literature is very, very clear, and what I talk about in the book all the time and in a lot of articles and my newsletters is midlife. So when you start hitting 45, 50, 55, that's a critical window. You can start to take control of your health then to really, prevent, hopefully, or reduce your risk vastly for issues related to dementia and Alzheimer's disease as you age. If you wait till your 60s and 70s, it's a lot harder. Genetics plays a huge role in the timing of all of that, but it all boils down to the sooner the better.
Thank you. Thank you. I just see that we have another question from Anastasia. Thank you for posting the question. And she's
Hi, Anastasia.
Hi. And she is asking, what is the optimum daily dosage of zinc?
Well, most people are actually deficient in zinc and magnesium. So it's good to optimize both if possible through separate supplements, and make sure you're multiple. I have one vitamin A formula that I love because it's rich in B vitamins and zinc and all of that. But I would say most people need to be taking at least 25 milligrams of zinc daily. All right. And in some cases, when you have been shown to be zinc deficient, you may need to go 50 milligrams. And I've seen in patients that I've worked in throughout the years where it's taken months and months and months. The same with vitamin D. Once you get your optimum levels, either because you've done a blood test, with zinc, there's a very simple, what's called a taste test. There's a liquid liquid zinc product, which a practitioner can administer, and maybe I should do a little video about doing that. I'm sure they could find it at YouTube. So it's called zinc taste test. And you put a little zinc in a teaspoon or whatever, you put it in your mouth, and how strong you taste that and how bitter it feels determines the level of zinc deficiency that you might have. Wow. I can also see that through a blood test.
Yes.
So there are enzymes in a blood test that are sometimes used all the time in terms of an evaluation. And it's a zinc-dependent enzyme. So when I see that enzyme low, I know that there is probably a zinc deficiency. But the zinc taste test will also determine that perhaps you need to go at least 25 milligrams, 40 milligrams. And the literature does say be careful of too much zinc, and that's a caution.
Yes.
You want to make sure that you're taking the zinc that's appropriate for you, and you want to figure what that may be, speak to a practitioner. But generally 25, 40 milligrams starts getting your zinc optimized.
Fantastic. That brings up a question that I was thinking about. You've shown us so many different supplements and vitamins, and even from Chinese medicine. What would be the number one, if it might be overwhelming for some people? So what would you recommend? Would it be the first step to consult their doctor? Let's say they cannot have an access to a doctor right now, to general doctor. What would be the safest option that they could go with, number one option?
In terms of herbs?
Herbs or any supplements that are safe for everybody?
Well, all the supplements that I showed in that presentation in the immune system document PDF that I'm offering for people are safe to use. But it's safer if you work with a practitioner and says, look, you need more of this, you don't need so much. The things that everybody needs on a regular basis are B vitamins, right? Antioxidants, maybe optimizing zinc and vitamin D, really important for your immune system. So you should be getting some of that in your multiple, and you may need more of that depending upon your situation and what you're shooting for, whether it's immune system health or Alzheimer's, brain health, whatever it may be. So that's where, you work with somebody and say, because there are tests, there are lots of tests. A simple blood test, I can tell from a simple blood chemistry test that you need more B vitamins. For example, a lot of people are genetically unable to utilize folic acid, all right? So they need to go with what's called an active folate, which is only available in more professional brand supplements or really good multiples or B complexes. So I can see all those things in a blood test or in other tests. So having your blood chemistry analyzed or other tests analyzed to say, look, looks like you need a little bit more of this or a little bit more of that. You seem to be deficient here. That's really the best way to approach that. Be careful about going too high. I'm a big fan of silver. Keep that around and start taking that when you feel the cold or flu coming on. That patented silver, that nano silver that I was talking about, it's been shown to be very, very effective. And there's actually studies. We're running out of time, so I thought we might have some time, but there are many studies out there that are exploring the use of these things like melatonin, vitamin A, vitamin D, some of the herbs, right? The silver. They're exploring these in terms of how it can support somebody, that might be prone to a coronavirus infection, okay? There is nothing out there that says it's going to work for that. Let me emphasize. But they're looking at that, and common sense says that you want to support your immune system. That's the focus of this, right? You want to support your immune system. This is what supports your immune system, regardless of what pathogen. So as far as the silver and the herbs, it's been shown to be effective in influenza, hepatitis B, the H1N1 virus, swine flu, okay? So the potential is there, but we don't know yet. We can't make any claims.
Yes, because it's still new. Very good, thank you. Maybe you also answered the hormonal level, as you mentioned, the DHEA, if I wrote it correctly, versus cortisol level. So also from blood test, the only way to find out.
You can get a good idea of DHEA in the blood. It's called DHEA sulfate. I have used salivary testing for looking at DHEA and cortisol at the same time, because it's very effective for that particular evaluation, if you will. It clearly shows the cortisol to DHEA ratio. And I highly recommend that for people in aging. I used to do a lot of that. And I supplement with DHEA regularly. It's good too, when you go with these hormones, it's good to get a little guidance, but say like melatonin, if you want to just support your melatonin on a regular basis, 1, 3, 5 milligrams at bedtime is a good idea. And so, there's those generic recommendations out there all over the place, but hopefully you can get some more specific advice for your needs as well too.
Fantastic, thank you. So what I'm seeing, you gave us a wonderful list of all the things that are available to us, and then we can go and make an informed question to our doctor, practitioner. I need to have this test for this.
Right, and all those supplements that I have in that document, there are plenty of studies on all of it, okay? Like I said, this is a science-based approach, so all of those supplements are not pulled out of the hat. And I was hoping to show you examples online, but vitamin D, silver, zinc, vitamin C, they're all extensively studied in the literature in terms of immune health.
So they just can pick, let's say, the silver, if they were to walk away with one thing that they can purchase today or implement besides eating more veggies and broccoli.
Well,
and not cooking it.
I hate to point out one, but the things I always make sure I have around in case I catch a cold or flu is a Chinese herbal formula, silver, make sure I'm
Yes.
optimizing my vitamin D. I
Yes.
will throw out one caveat. There are
Mhm.
some people like Dr. Weil and a few other professionals out there and some of the medical community. They're saying, be careful with vitamin D and elderberry, okay?
Mm.
If the COVID-19 disease process has progressed to a more severe presentation, there is a suspicion, there's no science on this yet, but when you
Yes.
look at the way it functions and the issues related to everything I talked about in terms of, you know, the cytokines particularly,
Mhm.
you know, there may be an interaction between vitamin D, elderberry, and those molecules when the disease process has progressed. Early on,
That's
it may
right.
be wonderful, but
Yes.
some people are cautioning to stop using vitamin D and elderberry. I just want to throw that out there.
Yes. Thank you. Yeah.
I'm not going to express an opinion on it,
Yeah.
but that's what some people, experts out there are saying. Be cautious with vitamin D and elderberry if you're starting to get more severe complications associated with COVID-19.
Very good. That's is that also I've heard, I'm not sure, there's so much information, so sometimes it's hard to determine what is what about Advil. You saw Advil, I believe that it's not good for corona, that it
Well, do
actually
you
could.
remember the part about the fatty acids and
Yes.
COX pathways?
Yes, I believe you
The problem,
mentioned.
the problem with NSAIDs is that they're not a selective COX inhibitor. They block all COX pathways. And the COX-2 pathway is the one that we're worried about in terms of inflammation,
Yes.
right? But there's other COX pathways that are very, very important for you. They're important for your digestive health and your
Mm.
cardiovascular health, right? So
Yes.
when you're blocking all the COX pathways, and that's why you see side effects
I see.
associated with NSAIDs, it's because it's blocking beneficial
Everything.
pathways, including some other COX pathways
Yes.
that are important for regenerating new tissue in the
Yeah.
digestive tract, for example. So that's the problem with those, whereas the fish oil and the polyphenols and the supplements, you know, they don't block all COX pathways aggressively like that. And you're much better off. And
Yeah.
those extracts, depending upon which one we're talking about, like a curcumin or a green tea, those extracts have actually been shown. Actually, there's an extract of a Chinese herb. The Chinese
Mhm.
herb is called Scutellaria,
Oh.
right? Scutellaria is Huangqin in a Chinese medicine. It's very rich in berberine, all right? And that herb is used in what's called a medical food
Mm.
that has actually been shown to be a very powerful anti-inflammatory supplement. So these guys that are derived from herbs can be very, very powerful in terms of suppressing inflammation. And so blue pleurum and the Chinese name from Chinese transliteration, Huangqin, you
Yeah.
know, and that formula that I have in the document is called minor, I think it's called minor blue pleurum, that has that in there.
Mhm.
But anyways, Chinese herbs are wonderful for that.
Yes.
And then the extracts have been well studied and put into things like those medical foods.
Wonderful. Thank you. Wow, there's so much information. Thank you for all the tools. I feel I'm going to rewatch our video. And also for all of you that are watching us either live, thank you so much for showing up. And thank you for asking your questions. I will also put this video on YouTube and in our blog post. So if you like, there will be all the show notes from our show. So if you want to know, okay, about zinc, you will see a link so you can just click to the place in the video. So those of you who already subscribed today, who are shown live, you will get an email with the link to the replay. so you can rewatch it. Just if you feel like myself that even though I made some notes, I still would like to replay it and re-listen to it, then you'll have an access, and I will share with you a link to the
Thank you,
YouTube video.
Lucy. You're so
Thank you.
organized and amazing around getting all this stuff together.
Doing my best, and I'm learning, so thank you. I've learned a lot today.
Thank you, and I appreciate everybody that made the time to come on, and hopefully might even still be here. I doubt that many people are still hanging on, but
They
in
are.
any case, they can always watch the replay.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Lucy. Really
Thank you
appreciate our
again.
time together
I
and the
appreciate you.
opportunity.
Thank you, everybody. If you have any questions, you have our links, and they'll be also in the show notes. Thank you so
Right.
much, everybody, and stay
Bye.
safe and healthy. Bye.